My name is Peter Helliar, and I guess I'm a comedian, performer, writer. I often have trouble saying what I do. I don't find it embarrassing what I do. I find labelling what I do a little bit embarrassing. I've only just decided to put performer on my entry forms when I'm travelling. I think the thing I enjoyed the most as far as instant gratification would be stand-up comedy, and it's the work that goes into it, and it's such a solo endeavour. For example, at the show that I've just finished doing at Adelaide Festival and Melbourne Festival and Perth and around the country is a show called Whatevs for Evs, and a lot of the reviews I get point out that I make stand-up look easy. Like it seems to be almost, even if they didn't like the show, they say how easy I make stand-up look. But what I know is that it's not easy. Even standing on stage on that night is easy, but 6 months earlier when I was at a club or a bar in front of 17 people or 60 people doing a routine for the first time and it not working as well as it did 6 months later, that's not easy. Driving to that gig, to perform in front of a smaller crowd, to test material out, questioning why I'm doing it, questioning if I should just have a year off doing a festival show is not easy. So the reward that you get away with it again, I think every joke I write and every routine I write, I kind of think, well, that's more petrol in the tank. I can keep doing this. And that's the satisfaction I get out of it. Anything that is worthwhile, maybe in life, and certainly creatively, begins with a certain amount of fear and self-doubt. I tell my kids, there's no courage without fear, because if there's no fear, there's no reason or opportunity to be courageous. There's a great quote in one of my favourite movies, Three Kings. It was George Clooney, which basically points that out. It's all set during the Iraq War, and one of the soldiers said, "I'm scared." I think he says, I haven't watched it for a while, but he said, I wish I was courageous. And George Clooney points out that the courage comes after. I've always thought about directing. I thought, wouldn't it be great to direct? But I was so intimidated by it. It was just something that seemed beyond me, and that I didn't have the skills technically, or even the way I've seen directors communicate with actors. I thought, I'm not sure if I could pull that off, and just to be in charge of that many people would just be frightening. 2 years ago, I made a short film with some of the people from the production team who helped me out, and I just shot it over 2 days. But for me, it was about two things: can I direct, and am I any good at directing? And it didn't get into Chop Fest. It got into like the public stage where the public could vote for it, and we didn't get any further, which was a little disappointing at the time, but only for literally an afternoon. Because then I remembered, well, I'm really happy with this short film that I did. I got to direct, I really enjoyed it, and I think I can do it. And then when It's a Date, this TV series I've been working on, came around, and I said, can I direct an episode? Laura Waters, who's so supportive of me, she said, yeah, absolutely, why not? And then Sean McHale said to me, if you're going to do one, why don't you do two? And I was like, yeah, that's makes sense, because if I did one, the very worst, if I did one and stuffed it up, I could say to him, listen, you might have to get somebody else. The director who's doing the other 6 episodes can step in and cover me, because I'm not cut out for this. But I'd hate to do one and then go, wow, I wish I was doing another one. So I did 2. The ABC agreed, and just loved it. I got to direct John Wood, Denise Scott, Sibylla Budd, Luke McGregor, Lawrence Mooney, Sally Ann Upton. It was a really amazing time, and I'm really proud of the results. And it's one moment, even more so than stand-up, I think, when I look back at my not so much my journey into directing, because it's really the beginning of it, and hopefully I get to do more. I mean, it's really important to have people around you, and it's really important to have a champion in your corner, even more so when it comes to, in my experiences, television or film. Often you need, and I Bert Newton had said it to Rove, that you really need a champion at the network, and it was people like, I think, David Mott at Channel 10, and there's probably others that I'm forgetting because it was a while ago, but I know David Mott was a real champion for us at Network 10 and kept us on air and got us on air, and then for me, with making the movie, it was Laura Waters who worked on the Rove pilot, and just got along really well. We had a similar sensibility, and she said, I want to make something with you one day. And there's like a dozen ideas for films, and we kind of said, okay, we're going to make a movie. And she said, just let me know one day what movie you want to make. And I kept on, having meetings with her and telling her all the ideas I had. And then one day she said, okay, on Wednesday you're going to come to my house and you're going to tell me which idea we're going to make, and we're going to make a movie. And I go, oh, okay. So we're actually doing this because, you know, in this industry, and at that stage in my career, you know, you talk a lot about things you want to do, and then when somebody actually says, no, we're going to do it, it takes you a while to kind of go, oh, okay. Oh, okay, you're serious. We can actually do this. So I went to her house, and I still can't remember why I had my 8-month-old or 12-month-old child, Liam. He was maybe 6 months, because it sounds like I was like the dad, like a house husband who was like always looking after the kids. But for some reason, this freak day, my wife Bridge must have, you know, had something important she had to do. So I said, no, I'll take Liam, and he was crying when I was trying to tell Laura the idea. So we just walked around the block, and I remember pushing the pram, and I told her the idea for I Love You Too, which she already knew, but I'd kind of developed it a bit more. And she said, okay, cool, let's do that. I was in Perth for the festival recently, and I was with a young guy who was just like driving me to my gigs and to the airport and stuff. And I asked him if he'd done comedy, and he said, yeah, I tried for a little while, and I just didn't, I wasn't very good, and so I stopped. And he made a comment about it being a bit of a bitchy industry, and I said, I'm not sure what it's like in Perth, but I know in Melbourne I find it a really supportive industry. And maybe there's the industry which can get a bit political around festival times, and you know, there's always comics with gripes about not getting the room they wanted and all the time they wanted. But I think as a community, and maybe there's a difference between industry and community, the community is really supportive. I mean, the amount of times I saw over the Melbourne Comedy Festival, other comedians tweeting about other comedian shows and retweeting great reviews that, you know, other comedians got. And there's no need for them to do that, besides the fact that they're just being supportive. I think if you find people, whatever you're trying to do, if you find people who are of similar spirit, then you hang on to them as much as you can, because even when you are standing on stage by yourself and you've developed the show by yourself, it's still a result of being influenced and being encouraged and being championed by other people. I started comedy in 1996, and around that time in comedy in Melbourne, and all these people aren't necessarily Melburnians, but we all started around that time, and it gives me great satisfaction and pride that we've all gotten to, you know, a good point. You know, we worked hard and we didn't get bitter. I think the guys who maybe aren't doing it anymore, or disappeared for a while and then kind of came back, or just gave up, was guys who looked around their shoulders or over their shoulders and worried about what was coming and complaining about other comedians, or not getting the right time slot, or not being able to get booked in a room as a headline spot, you know. But I do think it's about working hard, and it's about staying positive, because there are plenty of reasons to get down, because often these are solo pursuits and you spend a lot of time by yourself, and there's a lot of rejection, whether it's from a room or, I mean, I've had 2 radio shows that haven't worked. You know, I've had a TV show that didn't work, but you just move on, and there's nobody who's been in comedy or TV or this industry who has been doing it for 17 years that hasn't had something not work. I think I've always kept in mind that it is about longevity. I remember I'd been maybe doing comedy for 6 months, and it's funny, I don't think I've ever been more full of my own crap and at myself more and more arrogant than maybe the first year. But between 6 months to a year of doing comedy, like, I got recognised at a servo only because somebody had happened to be randomly at the gig I did the week before at the Nicholson's Hotel in North Carlton, and they recognised, didn't know my name, but they said, I saw you do comedy. I'm like, oh, here we go, I've made it. You know? and then you kind of realise, you know, you're just a small part of this, you know, bigger industry, and you're nowhere near where you want to be, and you have to keep working hard, and you know, you got to keep running your routines, and it's not about being the shiny new guy or girl on the block. You want to have a career that is sustained over a period of time, not just for your own satisfaction, but, you know, I always wanted to have a family, and I've got 3 kids, and I take it very seriously that I have to provide, you know, over a long period of time. And, you know, I turn 38 next month, and I still have a long way to go. I did 2 gigs in 96, maybe 20 in 97, a lot more in 98, and then at the end of 98, Rove asked me to come and do the pilot with him. So early 99, I left my job at a bottle shop in Dan Murphy's in Elphington, and I left to become a professional stand-up comedian and walked into Rove pilot, and we were on air later that year, and I ended up being on that show for 10 years. I know my stand-up suffered because I I just got busier, and I did radio shows, and I did other TV shows with Skid House and Before the Game, and I didn't have the time to dedicate to stand-up. I was backstage. I'd been doing comedy for 6 months or so, and I remember telling these other comics who were just starting, and I was talking about money and making money in comedy, and I, granddaddy of comedy, Pete Helliar, who's been doing it for 6 months, said, you can't make this quite grandiose statement of you can't make money in live comedy. You can't do it. Embarrassingly, I was overheard, and probably, gladly actually, I was overheard by Andrew Goodwin, who is a great comic, and he just said, you don't know what you're talking about. You can. And he said it was really nice about it. He wasn't, but he wanted to make sure that I knew, and these young comics knew as well, that no, you can make money in stand-up, and you can, but you shouldn't do it for those reasons. I think that's the trap. We make sure we don't do anything just for the money. I mean, I've said no to a few of those reality TV shows because I kind of always feel like as a comedian it's good to be kind of on the outside of things like that, so you can make fun of them. I have friends who have done those shows. and there's absolutely no judgment, but I got asked to do one, which I did a routine about it in my show 2 years ago. There's a show called Excess Baggage, which is basically like a celebrity fat camp kind of show, and it didn't last very long, and they asked me to go on it, which was really a high point of my career. And I said no, really. It was the shortest conversation I've ever had. I just said no because I think that can not help your brand as well. I mean, branding is important because, especially these days, because everyone is branding themselves. Anyone on Facebook is branding themselves. I mean, people choose their profile pics really carefully. It's not just a random photo. I'm just going to put this on because it's the first photo I can find. So it makes sense that as any kind of performer that you should give that a lot of consideration. And a couple of years ago, I really thought about, what do I want my comedy festival posters to say? And I thought, my shows are just really about, they're just funny, and I don't evangelise. I'm not trying to teach anyone anything. There's been times where I thought I should have more depth to my, I should have more social comment in my shows, but it's just not who I am, or where I find the most humour from. I find it just from my own life. I think I've always rallied against the idea that we artists are, well, I can only speak on behalf of myself, obviously, and that I'm any different. There's not a lot of tragedy in our lives, and sometimes you can get paranoid. You go, has there been enough tragedy in my life? It's only been recently that I've really kind of thought that, not worried about, trying to be somebody I'm not, and just kind of really backing in, going, well, what I've got to say is worth something, and just being true to that instead of trying to go, well, let's try to make a David Lynch film. It's got to be set in some kind of reality for me, I think. I can get down, but I don't tend to let myself wallow. I have a wife who wouldn't allow me to wallow for too long. My kids just, they wouldn't allow it either, and they shouldn't have to put up with that. Sometimes it's been more in hindsight that I kind of go, actually, I was a bit down then. I went through a stage. I had left, I didn't really leave Channel 10 to go to Channel 7, but Rove had finished and there wasn't really anything happening at Channel 10 for me, so I joined Channel 7 to do a football show called The Bounce, and it's funny, the first week it went really well. We were driving around the next day and it was like listening to SEN and going, there's a new footy show in town, and everyone was up about it. And the second week was pretty good, there was a little bit of a job off, but it was all right. And then the third week, I think MasterChef started and we just got obliterated, and we did 5 episodes and that was it. It was a strange time because the day I got the phone call from our producer, Rick McKenna, the next day was the premiere of I Love You Too. So in a way, I didn't have time to kind of go, wasn't it sad about that football show, because I was off promoting this movie I was really proud of. It was like a year later, I think, that I kind of thought maybe that had a bigger impact on me than I thought. I remember having to go off and do a gig at the comedy club in Carlton, and kind of, I was still pretty new. So it was the first time I remember having to go off and do a gig when I was going through something personal, and on the way going, this is the last thing I want to do. I thought about ringing up and cancelling, and that thought was, a minute long. And I got there and got up and did the gig, and I found it really a good thing to do. I felt much better after doing the gig. You can find ways to get yourself up and work your way through difficult times, and use it to work your way through difficult times. There's a couple of quotes that I do love. One is from Rip Torn from the Larry Sanders Show, which more just makes me laugh, but I think it's not a bad one for comedians to keep in mind, particularly, and I guess even musicians maybe, is never start a show with a showstopper. And the other ones were, one is more a personal one. It's never make a decision when you're angry and never make a promise when you're happy, which I think is not a bad thing, because sometimes you can say things you can regret in anger, and sometimes you can promise holidays when you're too happy that you can't back up. Another one I've read, and I'm hopeless at remembering who says what, but to avoid criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing.